So it started from 1957. I was born in a family with a beautiful mother named Jolene Tennant, who married a guy named Jack Donkel. And he was about 12 years older than her. Handsome, gorgeous, big, husky guy with dark hair. All the girls loved him. My mom fell in love with him when he rubbed her ankle. That's all it took, she said. And so she married this guy, Jack Donkel, but she'd already had a son named Daryl, my brother, which I didn't know he was my brother until we were 18 years old, or he was 18. But it didn't matter, he's always my brother, is the way I looked at it. But my mom married this guy, and he worked at Bell South. He was a lineman for the phone company, and had a great mother. Called her Nell Donkel. She was an American Cherokee Indian, and she was strong as nails. I mean, she was tough as nails. She would say all the time, she goes, "I'm not afraid of nothing or nobody." She loved her alcohol. She loved her. She's just a great woman. And but my dad came from that family where he had like 4 sisters, Mallory, Debbie, and June, but he was not the same for some reason, but he actually would really punch my grandfather, and my mom punched my mom. She lost her front teeth. And it was one of those things in the 50s, back in 1963 and 62, women don't, once they got married, and it was, we were already born. My sister was just 6 months, I was 5, and, he got violent with my mom. He found another woman. My mom, strong woman. I'm not putting up with this. Grabbed those 3 kids. My mom went over and bought a house in Hollywood, Florida from Miami Gardens, and she made a go at it. And she raised us 3 kids and made us go to church every Sunday. We had to get dressed up. My brother and I had to wear the same matching bow ties, just us all. And we would go to First Baptist Church in West Hollywood, Florida. And that's the way it was for 9 years after that, until I was 14. But none of those 9 years were great because my mom started off, doing all kinds of odd jobs. I mean, one of them was putting together plastic fruits and with little cherries, decorations on tables, and that was what she did. And there was no money in it, but it was enough that she was frugal, and I remember the cheese in our refrigerator said, "Not for resale." And I go, "Mom, what is that? Not for resale? It's welfare cheese, Mom figured out how to get everything going, She made it, 66. Let's see, then 6. So it was just a few years of that, and all of a sudden her best friend said, "Let's go to Fort Lauderdale. There's a club." My mom was gorgeous, and my mom liked to dance. There's a club called Ladies in Fort Lauderdale. So she would go to this club, and they paid $25 for a games contest. Now, back in those days, 1962, 63, $25 was some money, okay? So my mom, she was shocked. She came home with a little trophy, and we ended up with 1,000 of those trophies. Total.
Wow.
And she ended up, then she finally got the big one, where it was a $1,000 prize for the big one. And we had it hanging up. And she became a celebrity in the area. And we're talking in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Miami. Her name was.
What kind of dancing?
It was. They opened a club at. Okay, so when she went from there, somebody found her and then said they interviewed her at the Eden Rock Hotel in Miami Beach, and they offered her a job to dance at a new club that were opened up just after this new film that just came out called 007. And they call it 007 and a half go-go. So my mom got the job there. And she became like a celebrity, instant celebrity in Miami Beach. So her picture was in the Miami Herald for year after year after year. The President of the United States sent her on a trade mission. She danced in every country in South America.
Wow.
She got the key to Miami. She was picked up in a big crane and dropped into the Orange Bowl to the Miami Dolphins as a gift. In a bikini, she was with Lady Bird Johnson on the beach with pigs, picking up her, and she was with her pink polka dot bikini, and the pigs on the beach, and she got in commercials, and then she got, and she, a lot of people fell in love with her. One of them was Frank Sinatra, and
wow.
And she would perform with Otis Redding, was a good friend of hers, and it was on the dock of the bay, and he sang with she danced with Diana Ross. He was friends with Diana Ross, and bands like Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. Back in those days, he was a big hit in Miami Beach.
Pretty big names.
Yeah, and so she was at the Miami Beach. It was called the Shelburne Hotel, and it was where the action was. And my mom was the action, and it was clean. It was all French bikini, all clean. My mom came home after work every night. Never brought a man home all those years. She would come home and she would say I was her special one. She called me her shadow, and she'd make me fresh lobster dinner at 4 o'clock in the morning.
How old were you then?
I was only like 8, 9, 7, 6, and it was awesome. Man, my mom was
good age for you.
That was great.
You know,
I was my mom's shadow.
And you're clean and straight at that age too. You're that's an age where boys are just good kids. Right?
I was a baseball player. I made the All-Star team. I played first baseman.
Where? Yeah.
First baseman, and Phi Delta Chi is the name of the team, and some nice guys took their own money, bought the jerseys for us. These cool guys, good Americans, Grabbed a bunch of us boys in the neighborhood, and we went into Perry Airport, Miramar, Florida, and so took an interest in me, and I became real popular in school. Danny Donkel was a popular name. I was known to be the toughest guy for the 6th grade. That I was known for beating up bullies. If anybody got bullied by somebody, or if somebody stole your lunch money, they would come to me, and I was a fighter. I was a good fighter, but I didn't like to fight. I just said, give them back lunch money. I was that kind of guy. But then it got to the point where everybody wanted to fight me, so we made a rule. You had to fight these other 3 guys. But by the time 6th grade, I realized I wasn't growing as much as some of the other guys were. And then I started getting into a whole different, more kind of getting along with everybody. But it was a great time at Boulevard Heights Elementary in 1969. I got out of Boulevard Heights Elementary. It was a great school. And then Apollo Middle School opened up. That was about the time the space thing opened, and we did pretty good with that. It was my mom raised all 3 of us, and the neighborhood you started seeing drugs popping around right around there towards into the 60s, 69.
Was your mom still dancing?
Well, she was just getting out of that. She was just she was in Post magazine. She was on Look magazine. She was on TV. She
was financially stable.
Yeah. She was always independent, and she was frugal with the money, and she never laid on a bill.
Yeah. And
her word was solid gold. Everybody looked up to her. I mean, her girlfriend, dated Colonel Sanders, when he had his, nobody knew that. My mom was friends with Colonel Sanders. And so the stories were pretty amazing, But by the time she was, we were 14, my brother just decided it was no longer time for my mom to give us the switches anymore. He got the switches out of her hands and started losing control of us kids, and we had to get us out of Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, because the drugs were getting bad in 69, 70. Yeah. So my mom wanted to get us up. We got up to Merritt Island, Florida, because she met a guy, fell in love with him, all because he she saw him and he asked her for a stick of gum, and he took the gum out of her mouth and put it in her mouth. And she ate it because she was so in love with the guy. And she goes, that was it. And that was crazy. So she married this Steve Riggs. First time she was with a man since for 9 years. And so she moved us up to Merritt Island, and he was quite the guy. He had a Donzi speedboat. My brother and me enjoyed the Donzi speedboat down in the Banana River, watching the Saturn V rockets blast off to the moon from our backyard.
Cool.
Having friends like Jeff Fogel's dad, who actually was in charge of the lunar module, and they actually couldn't get the wheel down on one of them, and they actually called his house from the moon. They relayed the kid on the phone for it, and Jeff Fogel, dad, my whole neighborhood was all aerospace back in 1971, 72. And it was
I mean, you're near Cape Canaveral?
I work Merritt Island is Cape Canaveral.
Okay.
And it's the Cape's on the one side, Merritt Island is where the vehicle assembly building is and everything. So it was big. I Dream of Jeannie was Cocoa Beach, remember, and all that stuff. So my mom, I went to school. My brother and sister and I went to school. My sister got on horseback riding. She was doing good with her. Everything was going good. My brother was popular in school. I was doing good and everything. And then all of a sudden, my stepfather decided to, cheat on my mom, and it broke her heart. So they got divorced,
Huh. Too bad.
And so at that time, my brother had his business putting these vinyl tops on cars. So
How old was he?
he was just a year and a half older than me, so he was right around 18.
Okay.
So I moved out with him and left my mom, and my sister was having troubles because of the divorce, I think, and she went to foster home. And so my mom was left at home by herself after spending her whole life. She was abandoned, just totally abandoned. She was at home on the river.
Wow.
In Merritt Island, and she was all alone. And they call it the empty nest syndrome. It's when you spend your whole life for your children, and all of a sudden they're all gone. Donna's out, Donna Marie, my sister's out in a foster home. My brother and I moved in together. He married the general manager of a car dealership where we set up a vinyl stop business. I went to work for him. I've been mowing lawns all these years, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, 14. And I had a coin collection that was going to pay my way to college and to get myself a van because I wanted to see the Grand Canyon and travel around the world, around the country, But my 18th birthday came up and somebody stole the coin collection. My mom told me to put it in the safe deposit box. Next thing you know, my mom, my brother, we separated. I moved to the beach, lived on my own, and I was in South Beach High School in 10th grade. So I was on my own in 10th grade.
10th grade?
Mm-hmm. I moved out on my own in 10th grade, in Pines Motel in Harbor Beach, Florida, and I took the bus to school at South Beach High School. When I went to school, all Air Force brats. It was at Patrick Air Force Base. It was all Air Force brats. It was great people. Air Force people were wonderful people.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them.
Yeah.
And so I did really good with me and a lot of friends. We'd catch shrimp at the Mathers Bridge, and we would eat shrimp, and we would, fish and crab, and we were just enjoying the beach and surfing, and life was great. And I met a lot of new friends. My friend Bob K. Hall, but he's dying of cancer now. He's got 2 weeks to live right now. I'm going to see him on Sunday.
Wow.
He was my best friend, and then so I'm going to go back. So he was. I actually made it through night school because they couldn't afford day school anymore because it was the Kennedy Space Center crashed right around 75. It was no longer the Saturn V rockets. It was the in between before the shuttle came up, and so the Kennedy Space Center there was no work out there. So I had to go do construction. I did. I was a mason's assistant, which he mixed mud, built scaffolds.
Hard work.
All hard work. Put the gloves on. But we're talking about 100-degree weather, and putting the blocks up, the center blocks, and then stack them up so the masons could come in there with little scalpels, masons made good money, but the labor, we made good money too.
Yeah.
When we got paid, what we found out is our boss would do things like have us work for a month and not have the money to pay us, and write us a check that was no good. And that's when we realized when we dropped, checks bounced and we got paid at Publix or the grocery store. But anyways, it was a terrible time, and then it was hard. But I had to move back home with my mom because she remarried to a nice man who was worked for Chrysler Corporation, and Bob Kenyon. I had a son, Bobby Kenyon, and so they invited me to move into their house on the beach, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. But before that, my mom had actually tried to commit suicide before she met him, when everybody left her.
Well, thankfully, she was not successful.
No, she wasn't successful because my brother's wife had a hunch, and the hunches are good. She went over there, felt like something was wrong. Because all the kids had moved out, that empty nest syndrome. All kids should be aware of the empty nest syndrome. And they should always focus on, when you're at that age, when you're not thinking about mom, everybody should be thinking about mom, because I didn't know this, but she needed to be needed, is what the psychiatrist told us.
Oh, yeah.
And so they told us to call her, just to ask her how to make a cake or how to heal a wound. Just call her and talk to her. So she was laying in the bathroom, split both wrists. Our nurse across the street saved her because she did the tourniquet real quick, and they said it was like minutes and she would have been gone.
Thank God.
So she survived that, and she's 85 now. I just got her assisted living, but anyway, so went from there that I actually became a valedictorian at night school with Bill Nelson, who's now head of NASA, was a U.S. Senator from Florida for many years. Spoke. It was his first year as the House Representative after me when I gave the valedictorian address, and he said Dan Donkel gave the best address, and he says I'm not gonna use my address. I'm gonna come up with some, and we recorded his of mine. And his was the best speech he ever gave. But Bill Nelson was quite the guy, and he kind of helped me, and I actually went from there to go. I worked 3 jobs. Worked at the Kennedy Space Center as a porter, wiping off tables, flipping hamburgers, mopping floors.
Doing what you got to do.
And I would go to school at Brevard Community College. I actually made the dean's list. A miracle, because I was also working at Red Lobster as a pots and pans, and I was studying about view. I would put my stuff up on the wall to study for class, because I found out paper sticks to the wall when it's wet. So I could wash the pots while I'm studying. And I just stared at put the damn thing on the wall. And so I was able to use Red Lobster to eat extra and bring home food for mom and dad, which kept allowing me to stay in the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad was allowing me to stay there because he was a very Marine Corps type guy, great guy, helped me a lot, put me on the right straight and narrow. And his son really loved me, and we got along great. We both loved music, and he paper route with him, and we did paper routes. So we did paper routes. We did. I did paper route for the USA Today. I did the Kennedy Space Center and Red Lobster, and went to school.
Wow.
So when people tell me you can't do it, you can do it. So I actually got my Uncle Jimmy, who's the record producer, who was good best friends with one of my good friends with Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley, Uncle Jimmy knew him. He had his record business. He knew everybody in Nashville. And I found a Christian school I wanted to go to called David Liscombe, and Uncle Jimmy said, "Come on up. I'm opening an Elvis Presley museum."
Oh, really?
So came on up. He took me in his limo, and I think we had the drummer for Elvis drive me to Lipscomb, and we went in the limo and interviewed, and got accepted because my family doctor wrote me a letter. Bill Nelson, Senator Bill Nelson, wrote me a letter, and got in this fine Christian college called David Lipscomb University, or college back then, and studied Bible, because I studied world religions at Brevard Community College, and I found that Christianity made the most sense. There's still all religions in the world, and I said, no, the one that makes the most sense is Christianity. And so I wanted to go study the Bible. So I went in there, and they accepted me the college there, and off I went. And Uncle Jimmy was helping me out, got me in there, and Nashville was a lot of fun in 1977. And every summer I would go to the Grand Canyon, because when I worked at the Kennedy Space Center, the company that was the head of all the concessions had the concessions with the Grand Canyon. So anyways, so we as I searched for a college, because Brevard Community College was a community college, and I saved up enough for money from working at the Kennedy Space Center and the Grand Canyon. Went from the Kennedy Space Center to the Grand Canyon in the summer, and so I found a way to pay my college tuition. So I went to the Grand Canyon after being accepted at David Lipscomb, and I earned all these tips, and I was the bellboy. And it was so much fun. On the north rim of the Grand Canyon, it's 8,000 feet above sea level. It's up in the Canop Forest, where you have the Canop squirrels with a white tail, and just beautiful ponderosa pines, and the air just smells so good up there. And just like I'm driving my tradesman van and getting my job and working at the Grand Canyon, I get up this Grand Canyon Lodge that was built by Union Pacific Railroad in the 1920s, and they gave it to the United States government for $1 for a tax write-off. So I pulled up this beautiful lodge, Grand Canyon Lodge, and I was all but, golly, I was 20 years old, right? And I got my job. It's going to pay for college, and this is great. And so I got in there, and I went to tell the job manager, Mr. Porteous, I am here to report for duty. I'm the bellman, bell captain. He says, okay, here's the equipment, and here's the plunger. You need to go over to the woman's bathroom and plunge that toilet because it's stuffed up. I said, I'm sorry, sir, but you don't understand. I'm the bell captain. He says, you can get back in your van and go all the way back to Cocoa Beach, Florida, or you can get in there and plunge out the shit out of that commode. I said, Mr. Porteous, I'm going to go plunge that shit. And I went in there, and we got along fine after that, Mr. Porteous. He was the boss. And I worked there. A lot of tips. Went to the post office. They had a little post office up there, log cabin post office. And I would give them all my money, and I would send it to my mom, and I paid for college. I went from the Grand Canyon straight back to Nashville, Tennessee, where I would do my regular semesters, and then
was that undergraduate?
For undergraduate school. I went there for my freshman and sophomore.
What was your major?
That was Bible.
Oh, okay.
I was studying to be a preacher,
okay.
and I was doing good. I was making A's and B's, and I was like, wow, I almost made a 4.0. I was so happy, And so next summer, I went back to Grand Canyon and did it great. Doing things like meeting beautiful people around the world, dating some really nice girls, getting into poetry with the girls, hiking the Grand Canyon with them, and meeting all kinds of friends, doing the mules down the canyon. I had my family come out, my mom, go to Las Vegas, see Sinatra, and come back, and it was really cool. And the first year was like we were going to see Elvis, but he died that year at 77, August 77. But my mom and I and my stepfather, we went and saw Frank Sinatra, and we just took him to the Grand Canyon. It was great. It was paid my way through school, and it was like 1977, and I decided to run for senator of my class, and I came up with a plan because the girls had to be in at 10 o'clock, and guys had to be in at 1 o'clock, and I was going to change that so the girls can stay out to 1 just like the guys. Unfortunately, the head of school, Carl McKelvey, he's still alive, he said that, Well, in front of the entire class during the Bible, when we have a morning Bible study, singing praises to God, chapel we called it, he announced that the reason why men get to stay out to 1 o'clock and women's got to be at 11 because men can't get pregnant. Well, that got back to the women, and of course they had a fit, and of course he had to backtrack. And so when I ran, what happened was I came with a 1 vote. I actually lost, but what happened was they changed the rules. Yeah.
They took your issue away.
They changed the rules, not what I was saying, where the women could stay out to 1. They changed the rules where the men had to come in at 10.
That didn't go how you planned it.
No, and so that's when I learned what the word backfire meant. Be careful of the word backfire. So I was being ridiculed by people, and I would work at this Sheraton Hotel, the bellboy, during school, and I'd ride my bike in the sleet and the snow, and I had boys coming at me from fraternities throwing balloons full of water at me.
Oh, wow.
And I chased them down with the cop, and I sprayed them off with the water, and then the cop let me spray them as long as I didn't. He said, you can spray these guys on water, or we can have them thrown in jail. And they said, spray us with water. So I sprayed them. But that caused more trouble. And they do things like they would penny lock my door. You ever put the pennies, you push the door open, you put the pennies in there. You can't get out of your dormitory. They would do things like put the pee in front of the door. If you open the door, the pee would come through. And then one time there was a human log in my bed. And so it was got to the point where...
It wasn't your fault, though.
It wasn't my fault.
I
But
mean, you were trying to...
I'm dealing with Christians here, at this
I get
school.
it. Well, they're all good people.
And they were not happy with me. So I just told that the Bible department head, his father was the head of Pepperdine, Batsell Baxter, his father, helped get Pepperdine going. So he arranged for the president over there, Howard White, to give me a full scholarship. I think he felt sorry for me. Wanted to get me out of there before I got killed, But I went over there, and so I get a full scholarship, a presidential scholarship to Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. I mean, that was a miracle from God, right? My mom's so happy. I'm so happy. I can't believe it. Get out to Malibu.
And you didn't have a 10 o'clock curfew.
No, you can do stuff in Malibu. I mean, literally. So I get to the dormitory, I get there. So I decided to run for president, student body government right away. Run for office and just to get my name out at first. But I didn't quite lose. But I had met a lot of people. Got some exposure in the paper, the school newspaper. I met Joe Garagio's daughter, and he worked with her. And I met the Molson Beer family guy. He was a friend. Jack Delaney's son was a good friend of mine from the exercise guy, Jack Delane, and he would give me a Pepperdine T-shirt. They're all nice to me. And I saw all these people driving around. All these Iranians were at the school. I mean, I'd never seen some Iranian, but that was 1979 when 1980 when the Shah had been run out of Iran, and they're driving Porsches and Mercedes, and I'm driving this $600 Nova, where the floor was rusted out, and you could literally see Pacific Highway going down when you're driving down the road. That was. I had to make my choices between Coors beer, 90 cents to buy Coors beer, or do the laundry. Of course, we weren't supposed to drink, but we did. And but I made it, and then all of a sudden, that same year, 1980, right around March, I was in the school cafeteria and I'm eating, and I'm not paying attention, and there's maggots in my food.
Oh, gross.
And I'm eating this stuff with maggots in it. And I didn't realize it. And all of a sudden I'm looking at it. I just,
Yeah.
and I ended up going back to my room. And if you ever had food poisoning, it's like an itch in your rectum that it drives you nuts. You want to scratch the walls. You want to, The only thing that made it for me is I'd run down to the pool where they had a jacuzzi. The hot water in the jacuzzi is the only thing. And that's all I could do. I ran down there, stayed there for a long time. And my friends basically, they got me to the hospital. A guy from the Church of Christ, from the College Church of Christ, took a special interest in me, Dr. Alexander, and he went over there to the very nice hospital. He said, "They're killing you in here. They're making you eat steak when your intestines are bleeding on both sides, inside and out. You can't eat steak. You need to be taking off food. You need to go to UCLA Medical." So I didn't have the money. So one of the girls I met from Grand Canyon, her and her husband were nurses, and they snuck me out of the hospital, raised me on the welfare office, signed up for welfare. I'd only been in the state for 2 years, got Medicaid, went back to the hospital, had the Medicaid, Medi-Cal, it was called Medi-Cal, paid for, they transferred me over to, and the first thing they did to me, they said, "Oh, we could do a colostomy," where they put the bag on the side of you when you poop in the bag, and they cut out your entire rectum. So because I lost all this weight, I was bleeding, I was in the hospital for a long time. And so my mom calls up, they said they were dying. They thought everybody from the university came in and said, "He's dying." And then they said this was one thing that would save his life. So my mom flew all out. My dad was mad because I wouldn't join the Marines. Stepfather, Robert Kenyon, was mad because I wouldn't join the Marines. And so he didn't want to let her go. So she sold her own stock at SeaWorld and used her money, flew out, got with the doctors.
Because you wouldn't join the Marines?
Yeah, he wanted me to join the Marines. I wanted to be a preacher. But that was his business. But she used her money, came out, and she literally went to the library, studied everything, found out there was food poisoning, found out it needed an anti-inflammatory drug, and she told the doctors what to do. And then there was a teacher in the hospital. They just wanted to practice on me to put one of those colostomy bags on. Yeah. And they would practice a bone marrow tap. You ever get a bone marrow tap? Ow, ow. So anyways, my mom literally saved my ass. Saved my ass. And I worship.
Old story.
I worship my mother. So when my mom needs help, I'm there. But I got out, recovered, but I was so sick and weak I couldn't go back to Grand Canyon. I had to go back to stay with her, and it didn't work out so well because he was mad at me and they were fighting. So I wouldn't. Huh?
You still wouldn't join the Marines?
Wouldn't join the Marines, and I wanted to go back to school. So I went back and got a job part-time. The elder in my church got me a job working at Alaska Land Leasing, selling Federal Lease Filing. It was Federal Lease Filing Corporation, selling oil and gas lottery tickets to people over the phone that were in a 70% tax bracket in 1981. And I didn't know nothing about it, but my best friend who had, what would you call, photographic memory, and was a Pepperdine Law student, his name was Greg Matthews. He went in there, he was making a lot of money. And he showed me how much money he was making. Because we were in the Bob Dylan's beach house, and it was a fraternity house kind of, and we lived together there, because I wasn't going to school anymore, I couldn't live in the dorm, so I lived next to Gene Roddenberry.
Really?
Yeah, and his daughter, we used to lay up there and sunbathe all the time.
What's the guy's name?
Gene Roddenberry. He was from Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
And Bob Dylan was down the street. It was Bob Dylan's house. We were renting it from Bob Dylan. And so I lived in this house, and I dropped out of school, worked at selling these oil and gas lottery tickets. And then they started selling oil and gas leases in Alaska when James Watt became Secretary of Interior. He opened up Alaska. Reagan opened up Alaska. And next thing you know, I'm selling oil and gas leases in Alaska to these people that were trying to get a lottery. Money was flying through the door because there was 100% write-off on your taxes. When you're in 70% tax brackets, you're literally paying with you're gambling with 30-cent dollars. Yeah. And so people were buying these lottery tickets, and they were winning well leases. They get royalty income, and they were loving it. Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, New Mexico. Nobody even knew anything about the lottery program. So I'm selling it. And they gave us a pitch book. We had to read this book. I couldn't do that shit. I just got on the phone and started talking. Hey, where are you from? So what's your husband like? Oh, you got kids? And I made friends with these people. They were going to fire me because I wouldn't stick to the pitch. But people were buying from me left and right. I mean, people actually didn't even know what they bought from me. They just liked me. And so anyways, all these people bought these lottery programs, and they wrote it off in their taxes. And then we started selling leases. And then I guess the major oil companies didn't like it, and they shut it down, put a moratorium on the transfer of the leases. The company went bankrupt because you can't, the government sold the leases to them. We tried to sign them to the people that bought it, and they went bankrupt. The government just put you on a limb and chopped it off, and all those people are going to lose the money. So I said, that's ridiculous. Why are you doing that? Oh, I sold my mom. I sold my family doctor. I sold people I know. Leases in Alaska. So I went up and met Frank Mikowski, Senator Frank Mikowski, so Lisa Mikowski's dad, and he took me under his wing. He says, I'm going to help you do this. He showed me how to get a geologist. I hired a geologist. They headed the 6th largest bank's legal department. Russ Freeman gave me the money to start up the company, and I had the former chief of the Supreme Court of Wyoming, Judge Glenn Parker, hanging judge from Wyoming. He was a great guy. He served on my board. I had all these great people working with me, and we saved everybody's interest. We got stock for it. We bought these leases at Redout Shoal. Redout Shoal ended up going in production. And all these people that lost their money through that bankruptcy actually made money from the royalties of Redout Shoal, and they're still producing oil today, 22 years later. So I shut down the company in '97, made sure all the money went straight to the people that put up the money, like Ed, for example. Wow. And the money was supposed to go directly to him. And then, so basically they were able to write off their investment as a capital loss or a loss. And the royalties didn't come in later, so the royalties were no value. So when I signed the royalties, then there's hardly any value to them, okay? But it was later, after the production occurred, that the value came into the leases. Then they got the royalties, but they only had to pay small depletion allowance of 15%. So they only had to pay taxes 15% on that money. And so it was just beautiful because all the people got to write off their investment. And then when the royalties came in, they got a small oil depletion allowance of 15%. And all my investors have been making money for 22 years, including me.
Wow.
So I put the company to bed, and then my partner, my partner said, one of my guys said, Dan, why don't we pick up what you were doing? You were doing so well. So we did. We picked it up. Dr. Sam Cade, he was a radiologist, vice chairman of radiology from Baylor in Dallas, good school, Baylor. And he's a very respected person. You don't become vice chairman of radiology Baylor unless you really have your act together. And he's a wonderful man. He's wealthy. And he said, no, Dan, you just do it and we'll make this happen together. And we've been together ever since. And we sold 200,000 acres of Apache in 2010, sitting from that Hotel Jaja from NAPE. They met us at NAPE, and then we sat there from February till June, and it was nice staying at Hotel Jaja for 3 months, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Got to go to the Butterfly Museum and everything. But we ended up closing that deal, getting $10 million. He got $7.5 million. I got $2.5 million. And then we're going to get royalties. And so we did it again. So now we got this property here called Greater Point Thompson unit that the state's going to approve our unit hopefully this week. My scientist, Dr. Beverly Burns, who's head of with ConocoPhillips, thinks it's about 1 billion barrels potential. and a geologist, geophysicist, Larry Smith from Donkel, formerly. He thinks it looks good. And then the former director of Division of Oil and Gas, State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Bill Van Dyke, worked here 40 years, is helping me run the show. So I come here to NAPE today in 2023 because I put all of this together, got all the reports together, found out the well's doing 8,000 barrels a day, found out there's hardly any wells in the United States onshore doing 8,000 barrels a day, and this is right next to me. So the plan is that we met, me and Jeff Peterson and I met with John Brooks, who was the former CEO in Virginia, and we met with Occidental, how he met that girl in the pool, was a fluke, and the next thing we go over to Occidental, they were interested, got other people interested, Cal's interested, and talked to the state a little bit, and if things work out, we can deliver this oil and gas to our allies in the Pacific Rim and help balance our trade and also supply our allies with energy and make Alaska grow. And I plan to take my money and put it towards education, because I think the one thing this country needs is to be educated. We need to know people need to be known, and then that's what the young people. That's my hope is. I believe in Christian education. I think this is what my goal is, and that's the reason I'm doing this, because I think people need to love one another. I think the Bible teaches that. I have no objection to different denominations. I think that there's one God, and we all have different ways of worshiping that God. And I think that one of the favorite sayings in the Bible by Jesus is a couple of the apostles said, Jesus said, they're not teaching it the way you told us to teach it. He says, oh, ye of little faith. He says, if they're not against us, they're for us. So he's not saying everybody has to be right on 100%. Jesus is saying it's all about loving one another and recognizing he, died for our sins, and we have eternal life through him, and that all things are controlled by God. If we put faith in God, then we've really found the true wealth in life with our friends and our family, and makes a perfect circle, because my mom was raised by a Christian woman and got me to this point, and I did it through my faith in God, and met a lot of wonderful people along the way, and so far at 65, I'm really happy where I'm at right now. I got some habits I got to break with Atomic Habits, the new book that my friend John Brooks gave me. Maybe I can get these things cleaned up, but onward and upward. And so I think the future looks real bright, and I'm looking forward to have a lot of success and helping a lot of people. That's my story.
Amen, brother.